I don't know how many times I've said there's no place to be like New England in the fall. Spectacular colors. Today we actually don't have rain, so apart from the rain, you'd say, I suppose, there's something like New England in the fall. Great hiking weather, all the rest. Um, uh, Picking up the thread, the visual order thread, we've had a couple questions lately in which individuals are asking about the process and wanting me to either do a demonstration or video or something like that, which I do demonstrations, of course, all the time, but maybe one of these days, my producer is saying maybe what I need to do is when I get to 1,000 subscribers, I should offer at that point to do a live demonstration, and I'm considering that. And we're up to somewhere close to 500 now, but let me let me do what I can with a little bit of a help from my from a former student who's really trying to nail this down for herself. And this was more than a year ago. And here, let's look at these questions while I'm taking a minute here. Paul, it would be great if you show process photos, not just end result related to my approach, without drawing how I progress or with minimal drawing, etc. That's Melih. And I think it's time for a painting video or a pastel video, Royce. It is, as I said. So there are the points. And so let me just move you right along here. I'm going to make some. You just look at the pictures. I'm going to show you a photograph of the original setup in the studio, which is set up just for the purpose, so we could analyze this between the two of us. And unfortunately, we only have about 6 images that were shot at different times, and none of them are the final one, but they all get us up to the point at which you would say that's not a bad start. And so I'll try to cover all the information in between and let you just go ahead and look at it. Here's the image, and I'm going to say the photographs that you're going to see are really weak in value. I don't know why the camera does that. They tend to not do the darks. I've seen that most of these modern cameras, the stuff you get up with the phone and all that sort of stuff, are really, really nice, except that they don't even begin to reflect the values as they should. So the photographs on the right, what you're seeing there is a blank canvas, shall we say. And we do start with a white canvas. We do it for bunches of good reasons. Probably the most of which is you don't want all sorts of layers underneath blocking that light, whatever chance there is of a reflective light coming through the colors. If you know painting like I do, you know that when you lay darks down over a white, you're going to get a much more I don't know what the right word is, a vibrant dark. So did I say lay the darks down? Yes. If you lay the darks down over a light canvas, you can get a much more vibrant dark. A second reason to do it, though, is because when you first put down lights, and I recommend people put down lights first, because when you first put them down, and this student managed not to do that for me, so I'm hoping she won't find herself being too picked on in this course of this thing. I am trying to show you what we do, and then some of it will involve saying this isn't quite how it works, but it's in the ballpark. This is very much in the ballpark. I wouldn't show it to you. But I work from the lights. And the principle is that you're going to draw with the darks. A direct painter draws with the darks. But a direct painter also paints wet into wet. So if you're doing wet into wet and you're drawing, you have to have white there already, don't you? Or the lights. So if you're drawing with the darks, there are the lights. Aren't they sitting there? Well, that's just one reason. The other one, though, is that we don't use white. So we don't use up that white that you're looking at there. That's on reserve. That's as light as white can get. And any paint that we have, I don't think there's a single paint that we have that isn't darker by being colored. So what you'll see is if you put a color dark up there, it's going to look like a dirty smudge on a white canvas. Don't let that alarm you. You won't be able to hit color notes unless you get past that white, right? Color notes. There's an interesting story. Stevens, I think, used to say you can tell a colorist by the way he paints whites. So whites aren't just whites, right? They're actually colors, and you have to process through the red, yellow, and blues to get it. So that white serves a different purpose, and that is to show you how far you are from white. It's so easy for a student to paint pasty. So if you lay down a white and it's making it look like a smudge up there, a dirty smudge, apart from, I mean, obviously it'll also enforce the idea of chromatic, because it'll look like a dirty smudge unless you have a reasonable amount of chroma in that light you do put down. So let's go right past that. That's enough on that point. And by the way, these photographs don't quite show the sizes. They go in and out of being the right size to the, or even being the wrong location in relation to the photograph that's sitting there. The photograph really wasn't the photograph on the left doesn't actually show the framing of the painting the way it ultimately was, or the way she was aiming. It's just a general photograph. Takes in probably a little too much area around it, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, it's enough to serve our purpose. So what we do is, we're impressionists, so we go around setting colors out, right? We set the lightest light. Now right in the middle of that, let me make one of my arrow marks. Right in the middle here, that light should be a smudge. It should not be a blank canvas right there, okay? Because what will happen is you'll set all your values too high. If you're assuming, you will be assuming that white is the white that is. Well, remember now that everything is relational in our way of painting. So when you put a white down, it's not that white and not some copied white off of, whatever, like literally transferred over. It's actually a note. It's a color note. And all we know about it is it has to be darker than the whitest white, because we need to reserve these whites for accent or for all sorts of other potential hazards. So this white has to be a dirty white. And the general note of it is what we're after, not the littlenesses of one little, maybe if there's a highlight somewhere or other. All right, so that should be there. That's the only thing I would correct here, and that is she's looking for the color value up here. These are all harmless areas down here, as you can see in that painting. There's really nothing to worry about. She can go right into the corner and just plop that in there. But she set the color note up in different places around the canvas, and she's trying to set up the major color notes, right? So you have, color-wise, you have, and again, she seems to have left this one as a white. That's this one right here. Not the thing to do, okay? Keep that in mind as you work. Anyway, but your job then is to get these three colors doing the right thing to each other. And I can't judge of this. This note looks like it should be more red, yellow, or blue, right? So it looks like it should be more cool and more blue, but we can't judge these colors. So we're gonna just say, if you were trying to do that, that's one of the corrections you would keep making before you start doing any drawing. So the drawing that's sitting there now is the drawing that you'd call placement drawing, right? So you begin to set these things where you want them, roughly. All right, the rest of placement, it comes next. So then what we begin to do is we start creating what we call the arabesque, and that's the figure created by the leading lines of a composition. But we're setting up, for example, the top and bottom or the left and right locations. That's what we're trying to do. So it looks like in this situation, she's trying to set up this as her leftmost point. She doesn't give us anything on the right yet, okay? But she's setting up this. Now in theory, you could say, let's let this be the given, and then you'll have to find the location of this and get it right to these 2 points, but you wouldn't change these two, whatever you call the given. In most paintings, you pick a given. A given would be this and something over here, some strong reader here and something over here, and you'd call that your left and your right, or you could do top and bottom. Now this one, I remember this very distinctly, not reading like this. So the photograph, again, is not helping us any. It's considerably more like this in the way it sort of isn't there. But if you're doing top and bottom, you would do this, even do it weakly, and then you go down and do this. Get the angle right between the two, but get the look of nature at each of these points and say, let that be fixed. That height here is going to be fixed forever. I'll never change that. And that makes all the rest of the problems in painting, that makes them easier to solve, because there are fewer possible changes that you have to make. Anyway, so this continues on. In certain places, you'll see that there's a unity going on. So if you blur your eyes, and you got to blur your eyes to see what this start's all about, you'll see not to put any drawing in right here. And so this is that coming out of a fog or lost and found conversation. The coming out is here and here. The fog is wherever things actually fuse into the background, like right here, or when things fuse into each other and we're not making up drawing there and trying to find the actual object's edge. So there's a lot of that going on. This one I don't actually understand necessarily, but it has to be the photograph, because that reads kind of surprisingly well. She's saying that it actually was lost into this, and therefore it's the right way to handle it. if she's following this process. By the way, she finally did go to what looks like a darker smudge of light here. Again, I would recommend you do that early and often. And also, by the way, if you put in a smudge like this, go ahead and make it move from dark to light to whatever extent it does have a form feeling to your light. Like this thing has a round feeling. Go ahead and blow those things on. There's nothing to be harmed by doing that initially when you first put it in. Anyway, we're trying to establish a left and a right. Let's see how she does in the next one. That's called placement. I didn't finish talking about the arabesque. So here she's finally gotten to it where she's saying, all right, it's going to be this out here to this. This is my set width. And this point here has to be right to the 2. Now, she might have done this to this and then found this. In any case, I still would argue that you really want to fix these 2 as your fix because they're the most, if this one could be off by a little, and if this one had to move, it'd have to move a lot. If it would, depending on how, much of a shift this was or how far off it was. That's enough said. But again, now if you blur your eye and look at this thing, and it doesn't, unfortunately, doesn't come across really as well as I'd like it to in the painting. This actually implies that she means that there's drawing right here, and obviously in painting there isn't any drawing here, so we would actually have this washed through, much like any other place where we're trying to say, but we're not drawing there. You see how the leaf is handled. See, the background just comes right in here. Now the leaf, see, I actually leave this blank longer in the way I lay a picture in. So that I wouldn't even bring this anywhere near that green until I meant to actually draw it. So I would there'd be a lot more white on the canvas the way I lay it in. I'll show you that at some point when I do a demonstration. Anyway, but that begins to get you there. Now, one point I should make is that when we make these readers and we make them as a left and right, we actually make them with a point. So there's a bend in this, right? Now a bend, if it turns a corner, it can be used for placement vertically, and it can be used for alignment this way. And that's the ideal thing. That's what makes a point, right? It makes it useful, is that it actually has something about it that can hold the position this way and something about it that can hold the position this way. All right. Whereas this one here really can basically only hold a position left and right, right? There's no, we're still looking for, technically, we're still looking for a topmost or something to guarantee our widths. She's heading in the direction of saying, I'm fixing this as my single point. If these widths are given, then I'm going to say I'm going to let this be here. And when you do the setup of your design, you actually will say, all right, well, there's the I'm going to fix this point this way, and I'm going to fix these guys as the widths, and I'm going to let those stay the same forever. If I fix this one, it means that this one could still move up and down just to get that angle right? But this isn't going anywhere this way, and this one aren't going anywhere widthwise, if you're following that idea. All right. So you see she's gone to a little bit more greater development, right? And so there it is, the beginning of this considerably more clarity here now, isn't there? You, based on your look at this photograph, might wonder if I really should be losing this much that way, or this precisely that way at all. Or should I have this showing yet? You can't tell. It's so difficult to tell with photographs working like this. But it's still, the idea should be coming across to you. We're actually just evolving more and more this relationship to this. Now, it really matters that if you start getting something that actually starts showing a height, that you really make sure that height feels right to this length, right? Most people miss that forever. They think that the size guy, the tendency is to go over there and see if the height's right, looking over here. It's one thing you can never do in our way of painting. You actually have to say, is this height right when I'm looking at this width? And that's an art in itself. By the way, I should say one thing, and that is, you really need to study drawing. I mean, you really need to be comfortable that you can draw anything you see in front of you. And I don't mean anywhere near as much noodling, although you have to noodle, you have to model things up, but you have to do all this work of struggling through and screwing up proportions and getting a little bit of a comfort zone that you can have something screwed up and still figure out your way back into having it more like. And but you need to study drawing to do this kind of stuff well. And probably the worst thing you ever see when somebody shows you something like this that looks like a style or method or something is hackers who actually haven't done their homework. Well, don't you be one of those. Make sure you study long and hard until you can draw well, okay? And I mean drawing from nature. Just draw from nature. And don't draw sight size. Draw relationally. But draw. Learn to draw form. Learn to articulate. The fullness of an arc. Learn just the simplest kinds of things. And and learn to draw a shape like this to look right to a shape like that. Learn to play these things to each other. But then in particular, then again, go and learn to draw. So let's just call it that for now. The object, whatever the content is of any object, learn to be able to do that. Put your time in, okay? You can't. I can't give you a buy. I can't give you a buy. All you're going to do is make us look bad if you can't draw. So that's the by the way. All right. So you can see that anyway that she's evolving this, right? This is becoming more precise. This is now she seems to be wanting to use this down here as a key point. And the way it presents in the photograph, it looks like me. I'd likely be using this out here maybe as the point. Just because if I blur my eyes and look away, it looks like this is much more continuous. But I'm not going to second guess that person. And, and I might have even been telling her to go ahead and do that. But the one thing we don't have is we don't have a height yet. So that's a worry, right? So does this begin to be the first thing that's like a height? Well, I don't like to get in there and get the first thing that's like a height. I prefer to have a player. So even if it's not as strong as something else, I prefer to have a player way out there to way down here, to way, you know what I mean? So it's really tall to really wide. We work from the outside in, right? But this begins to give you the idea, doesn't it, of what I mean by the arabesque. It's a figure created by the leading points in a composition, right? So there's a figure, there's a triangle, if for nothing else, right? Now, can you do triangles? Can you do an abstract triangle by the point? In other words, can you see, this is like inverting the idea of the cat, finding going dot to dot to find the, can you find the cat? And you dot to dot until you see the cat. How about you reverse that? Can you find the dot to dot, right? Can you get point angle? This is Sargent talking, angle to angle, that point to point with the angle right. Point to point with the angle right, angle to point. And then can you see the width to the length? And can you see the proportions of the box, right? They're all in it together. So if you keep looking at all those different things, you'll be delivered with the results. All right. And so this is the last of the images I have, I do believe. And you can see what she's done now. Mostly, now again, apart from not giving me an actual outside top, and maybe even I would argue giving me the full outside left point, right? You could even say that about any of these. I really am. See, I don't want you to draw objects early, so you're always working from the bigger reader. But I am talking about there's two things in painting that you've got to get your head around in this kind of a lay-in. One is spatial, and the other is visual, the visual order thing, right? And don't confuse the two. Every visual order thing has a spatial component. But the spatial component wants to be worked from the greater to the lesser, from the outside in, while the visual component wants to be worked from the greater to the lesser, meaning from the stronger to the weaker. And sometimes for this greater spatial thing, we need some weaker players. So that's where, when I'm trying to do this, I set this thing up as left, right, maybe something for a top. I then say to myself, you know what, I'm going to give myself a bigger left. So I'm going to really go and say, what's the outside most point, and get this point as well. That's this thing over here. So now I'm going to have a bigger left side that incorporates this, because this is real. And this is the part that might actually might wind up getting cropped badly by the frame. So you're looking at this here, you're trying to get yourself, what's the rightmost point here? And you're trying to get yourself up here. You really do want this triangle, the outmost triangle, right? So that really is our agenda, right? There's two parts. Remember, I'll say it again, two parts. Spatial, which is the biggest box you can get, down to minor box, and lesser boxes. And lesser boxes, they get smaller and smaller, but each one of them has a point angle configuration, an abstractification, I guess I'd like to say, for lack of another term, but the creation of an arabesque concept. By the way, there's an expression Paxton used, and I mentioned it to you before, but it's the idea of floating points, of floating. He said anybody can connect things, but do you know how to do that thing where you put a couple things down and float them for a while until you see that they're right in their configuration to each other? So those are what the points of the arabesque are, right? So what you're seeing here is the way you would approach painting directly. There's no preliminary drawing. The drawing is all done from these abstract elements with the exact, as much as we can do it, with the exact look of nature at the point. So you make this as like as you can the first time. This is a Bonnat rule. Make this as like as you can the first time, or anything else you put in. And you decide to make it meet up, make it as like as you can the first time, and most definitely give it a point. Now, some of these things are more useful because of the side being in the right place, like in a linear way, like is that halfway or something. But whenever you're in an area, it's way better to actually get yourself around a corner so you have something that'll really hold the place this way as well as holding it this way. All right, I think that's the best I can do. I wish somebody was in the room to ask me questions. Oops, it does go a little further. That's good. I thought that was the last one. Now remember, all these shots are out of value. The photograph, when you're taking a photograph of a painting, it's amazing what it doesn't give you as far as values go with these new cameras, with these new phones. So, but you see that she's virtually gotten everywhere I wanted her to go by the end of a start. And the beauty of a start, of course, that this thing is all done in one shot, so that you're actually dealing with being able to move anything, and like a light right into the middle of a dark area by just ragging off paint if you have to. Okay, so but she has now actually accomplished the mission of the start. So you could say that I'm being a little bit fine in the earlier phases that I was showing you a second ago. You know, all this stuff. I can pick on little points just because of the things I found most important. But when you get to the end point here, or this is called the end of the start, and what you want to do is be a master of the start, and the rest of it is like the fractals mindset, right? It's like if you see the paisley, big old paisley shape, and then you see, oh look, it's made out of a whole bunch of little paisleys, and then you look at the little paisleys, and each one is made out of a whole bunch of little paisleys. That's our fractals mindset. And by the way, I hope you scientists don't laugh. I mean, that's my superficial read of based on a picture that they showed in one of those books on fractals. But the idea is the same, though, that you actually have if that idea, to whatever extent that's right, that you actually do what I'm doing here, and you actually draw the look of nature at the key points, making up this big abstraction and the big color relations, and then you just simply do them in smaller and smaller areas, right? And it begins to be all about this. Although it isn't quite as simple as that. It isn't quite as possible. There are ways in which this is slightly more complex, but it's far less complex than any other way you're going to work, I can assure you. Anyway, but you can see now that she's actually gotten to the point where she's said, and I've got this, well, not quite that, but she's pretty close to having her outside-most point. And it looks like she's done very reasonably good work of the angle, you know, and the box and all those things. And it appears to be in reasonably good visual order, doesn't it? The only part and this might have been we just stood slightly differently. She might have stood slightly differently. There seems to be a dark in here, and I'll bet you should have moved over a little bit, and she would have had that dark in there between there, and this would have been fine. But yeah, but that's the close out of the camera. You expect that every spot you painted in here, the color should be right for that spot. Not that you're painting every dinky little spot, but you're always after in the lay-in, you're always after the major color, like this big thing with a form movement, or this big thing with a value movement, or this is a massive color red. Now, we're still painting it by the spot, but we're only after that bigger mass of color. And so there's a generic, if you want to say that, not generic in the sense of being broadly general, and I've gone way too far. All right, I'm going to stop right now, actually. I'm just seeing I'm at 24 minutes, almost 25 minutes. So do enjoy that. Get back to me with other questions. Give this a try, and God bless you. But if you haven't done your drawing, he won't. Okay. All right, comment, share, subscribe, and thank you. See you next time.